What's good? It's Woog. I have listened to Andre 3000's New Blue Sun album a few times now, and I just want to get into some of the takeaways and some of what I hope this album does on the music landscape as a whole. Now, we already know that this long-awaited but also very unexpected, like we've been waiting for Andre's return since he left the music stage after Outkast's fifth and final album, Speakerboxxx The Love Below, even though they did do the Idlewild soundtrack after that. But he had one of the most unexpected exits from the music scene. I mean, you'd have to look at Lauryn Hill, even though, Outkast did 5 ultra spectacular, super critically acclaimed, increasingly commercially successful albums. They basically went 5 for 5 in great album releases, from their Southern Playalistic Cadillac Funky Music debut to that Speakerboxxx The Love Below 5th album. I would say Aquemini is probably my favorite, followed by maybe ATLiens, but I like their whole discography. But it's a very short list of artists who go out on top like that. And if you look at when Andre made his exit, this was just on the heels of winning the Grammy Award for Album of the Year with the Speakerboxxx Love Below, as well as just the ultra success of that funky pop single, Hey Ya, and then Roses, that Caroline, while Big Boy obviously did The Way You Move with Sleepy Brown. It was just success on another level for an already successful rap duo in Outkast, whose album before that was Stankonia with Bombs Over Baghdad, with Miss Jackson, with So Fresh and So Clean. Like, come on, like this is immense success. And then to leave the game at that point, it's like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Well, 20 years later, because that Speakerboxxx Love Below album was in 2003, it's 2023. Nah, Andre wasn't playing. He was pretty much done with the rap life, with the public figure, ultra fame lifestyle. And they just did a very good interview. Andre just did a fantastic interview. I think it was with GQ that I had recently finished watching. It's like a 33-minute interview, but he really gets into his decision to leave and his decision to stay away once he left the music stage. And he's always been a creative, but there's always like this increased pressure to get back into the game, get back into these promo cycles, these tours, just all of the obligations that come with that level of, visibility, exposure, and success. And he just doesn't want that in his life. Now, as for the interview itself, I would urge y'all to listen to that one. Or watch it. It is him, again, interviewing with GQ, and he just gets into a lot of stuff. He gets into answering a lot of the questions that we've had of Andre over the past 20 years. Now, we had also known in recent years, he had been seen popping up over the past decade in different areas like in LA and so forth, just playing the flute, and actually an assortment of flutes. And so in 2023, here he is with this new album of new material, New Blue Sun. Now, when it was announced and we saw like the absurdly long song titles, funny song titles, and we knew that he was going to be playing the flute, we probably just thought that it was going to be just him messing around with the flute. But this is like a proper ambient jazz album. And what I want more than anything with this album release, I don't want this to start, increasing the calls of Andre to return to the music scene. He gave you why he doesn't want to, or why he hasn't been releasing rap records lately. He just doesn't know what to write about at his age. And there's just a lack of relatability between him and the youth of the rap culture. Hip hop has always been youth driven. He just doesn't see his place within the landscape as things currently stand and where he is in life right now. Like, he debunked the idea that he's got like this vault of raps and songs that are written in the hip hop vein that he's just sitting on. He's like, nah, I don't have a bunch of ideas and rap songs like that. So let's take things as they currently stand with this New Blue Sun album. What I want this album to do in the music scene is to encourage more listeners, whether they're just hip hop fans or Outkast fans, or maybe they listen to a variety of music, but not anything in the ambient jazz, but ambient jazz space. this is to me, one of the most interesting currently evolving genres or subgenres in music. Like, there are a lot of artists that I currently listen to day in and day out from this same genre that I really wish more people were up on. Like, I mean, some of my shorts, my videos do spotlight some of these artists like Greenhouse or Mary Lattimore, or, you know, one of the OGs in the game, essentially the godfather of ambient music, Brian Eno. Now, if you listen to that Andre interview with GQ, when he was asked what were some of your inspirations to play this flute-based ambient-ish jazz music, and he said, you know, Coltrane, that was one of the more obvious picks. You know, jazz legend, saxophonist John Coltrane. Okay, no surprises there. I mean, I would urge you to get into Alice Coltrane, who's got more of that kind of abstract sounding jazz fusion music. And I kind of half expected Andre 3000 to also cite Pharoah Sanders, the late jazz musician who recently passed away after having basically one of the most critically acclaimed albums of the year, I think, of 2021, along with Floating Points. Floating Points and Pharoah Sanders released a very good album a couple of years ago. But if you listen to another couple of the names that Andre had mentioned as inspirations for this New Blue Sun album, it was Philip Glass and Steve Reich. Those are two more OGs in the ambient music space. Ambient music is one of these things where, there are varied sounds, several different styles of ambient music. You could have either kind of that glitchy, dubstep-ish ambient music. Think One Tricks Point Never. He's actually the one who produced that latest Weeknd album, Dawn FM. Or you can have sort of like a barely there style of ambient music. There's a current artist named Warmth. There's the OG Brian Eno, and listen to his Music for Airports. That's one of the most renowned and most essential album listens. Same thing with William Basinski's The Disintegration Loops. That's another one of those ambient styles that's like, it's barely there. It's almost so in the background that you forget that it's there. I'm trying to think of another couple artists that I listen to in that vein. I would say Gas, Gas. They have an album called Pop, an album called Narco Pop. But listen to Gas's music. There is kind of like a little kick drum, like a boom, 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 boom. But it's very atmospheric, very ethereal sounding. I also really like The Orb, who actually just did a collab album with Pink Floyd's legendary guitarist, David Gilmour. Listen to some of The Orb. My favorite Orb album, I would say, is COW, C-O-W. It's an acronym for Chill Out World. The Orb. Aphex Twin has a pretty famous ambient album. He actually has two. So check out some of Aphex Twin. He was like a big time 90s kind of house and dance style noise production. Aphex Twin. Listen to his ambient works. There's Harold Budd. That's another kind of OG, in the ambient space. I mean, some of these people date back to the 70s and 80s. Some of them even before that. Like if you talk about some of the people who inspired even Brian Eno, that goes a little bit further back. But there is no doubt that a lot of these artists, one of the better ones of today's game is Tim Hecker. I like a lot of his projects. These are some of the artists that are inspiration to Andre 3000 today, like Fennesz or Christian Fennesz. I just mentioned earlier, Mary Lattimore, she plays the harp. She actually played a couple tracks on Wise Blood's latest album. Boards of Canada is a little busier of a ambient sound. It's not as barely there. Their sound is a little bit more dystopian, I would say. There's a whole other style that's called environmental. That's more like Greenhouse's style. But environmental has a lot of very good Japanese ambient artists. And then you have like more of a jazzy style of ambient where Lionmilk, he's one of the better current newish artists of that ambient jazz space. And I do think that this Andre 3000 album kind of hovers between ambient and ambient jazz music. But I'm really hoping that this album exposes more people, or at least sparks the curiosity in a lot of listeners to dive deeper into this very rich genre with so many good artists, so many different interesting sounds, so many different types, again, different types of ambient music. If you want like a big time crash course and a very expansive listen, I've got a playlist on Spotify right now called Ambient hyphen the wallpaper, the wallpaper being one word, but I capitalized the W and the P. It's kind of like a play on the Pink Floyd album The Wall, but it's called ambient hyphen the wallpaper, because I've heard some ambient music referred to as wallpaper music, but that's more so the style of Barely There ambient music, where it's more atmospheric. Again, it runs the gamut. Like M. Geddes Gangras is another ambient music who's got a lot of kind of glitchy but very light sounding, very chimey, wind chimey, a lot. It's a lot going on, but it could easily start blending into the background. By the way, there are a lot of bells and chimes on this Andre 3000 project, played by producer, instrumentalist, musician Carlos Nino. Carlos Nino was one of the major collaborators on this New Blue Sun album. There are several collaborators. Like, again, this isn't just Andre playing the flute. Look at the personnel behind this album. He actually takes he's working with a lot of pretty renowned musicians on this project. So it's not really amateur hour, even if he doesn't fancy himself a flute virtuoso at this point. It's a very easily digestible and rewarding listen. So again, I would urge y'all to listen to New Blue Sun. Even if this isn't your primary cup of tea, get into this album and then expose yourself to some other ambient jazz and ambient jazz, with the hyphen between the two, kind of ambient jazz, where it's kind of a hybrid of the two genres. Get into some of those artists. I promise you, it's a pretty rewarding listen. If you scan a lot of my Spotify listens these days, a lot of it falls into that ambient jazz space, as well as actual jazz. Like Bill Evans is one of my favorite artists. Lonnie Liston Smith, he's another one of these 70s jazz musicians who used to play under or with Pharoah Sanders. Listen to Lonnie Liston Smith's song, Astral Traveling. There's a Pharoah Sanders version of the song, and then there's a Lonnie Liston Smith version of the song. There's also a Dr. Lonnie Smith who recently passed away, who's also in that jazz fusion, even ambient jazz space. So yeah, dive into it and let me know your thoughts on this New Blue Sun Andre 3000 album, if you've already given it a listen. And if you are into ambient or ambient jazz music, let me know what your thoughts are there. And please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you love music like I do. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.